The command chamber of Nebulon was a cavern hewn from basalt, its walls carved with Lumari glyphs that once glowed with the pride of a thriving colony. Now, those glyphs pulsed in frantic reds and purples, a chaotic reflection of the fear gripping the room. The air was thick with the sharp, metallic scent of overheating quantum reactors, their low hum rising to a strained whine that seemed to claw at the nerves of every Lumari present. At the center, Elder Lyrian stood, her bioluminescent skin flickering like a storm-tossed sea, each pulse betraying the dread she fought to suppress. Her six-fingered hands gripped the hollow table, its sickly green display casting jagged shadows across her angular face. The table projected a single, terrifying truth. 27 Vorgax swarm ships, their biomechanical silhouettes slicing through the void, 2 days from Nebulon. 40 hours, Terran whispered, her voice barely cutting through the chamber's oppressive silence. The chief engineer's tablet glowed with cascading diagnostics, her bioluminescence dimming to a sickly gray as she scanned the data. 2 days until they reach us. The Galactic Council's fleet is 3 weeks out, too far to matter. Her words landed like stones, her eyes darting to Lyrian, searching for a spark of hope. There was none to give. The holotable's sensors pinged relentlessly, each sound a needle in the room's fragile morale. The Vorgax swarm was a galactic terror, cybernetic pirates whose raids left only scorched earth and broken lives. Their ships, grotesque hybrids of stolen technology and organic grafts, were built for destruction, their crews driven by a hunger for resources like Nebulon's quantium, a rare mineral that fueled galactic trade. The Lumari, artisans who wove quantium into intricate circuits, were no warriors. Their colony, built on craftsmanship, had only flimsy shields meant for asteroid defense and a handful of outdated drones. Nebulon's wealth, once a source of pride, was now a death warrant. Lyrian's bioluminescence shifted to a deep indigo, a hue rare among her people, signaling resolve teetering on the edge of despair. She stared at the lead Vorgax ship, its hull a patchwork of metal and writhing tendrils, its weapon pods dormant but menacing. "Shield integrity, Terran," she said, her voice steady but threaded with a tremor only those closest could hear. Terran's fingers shook as she swiped through her tablet's alerts. Shields at 30% capacity under simulated stress. The quantum reactors are at their limit. Any more strain risks a core overload. Her patterns flared erratically, a visual gasp. The mobile labyrinths are prepped, but they're designed for natural disasters, not this. She trailed off, her gaze dropping to the floor, as if the weight of her words was too much to bear. The chamber's dozen Lumari, technicians, officers, aides, stood frozen, their bioluminescence a chaotic symphony of fear. Kale, the young communications officer, clutched his console, his patterns a pale, flickering blue that betrayed his youth and terror. "They're monsters," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I saw a vidlog from Calyx, a Vorgax raid. They've burned everything, took the quantium, left no one alive." His patterns dimmed further, a visual sob. He thought of his sister, LYSS, in the shelters below, clutching her son's hand, their patterns pulsing in panic. "We're not ready for this." Lyrian's gaze softened, but her voice was firm. "We are Lumari, Kale. We've carved homes from stone, turned quantium into light. We do not yield." Her words were meant to inspire, but they rang hollow against the sensor's ceaseless pings. Her patterns flickered to violet, a color of mourning, as she turned back to the hollow table. The Vorgax fleet loomed larger, a dark tide creeping closer. She felt the weight of her people's lives, their songs, their legacy, all teetering on the brink. Outside, Nebulon's violet skies, streaked with quantium-fueled auroras, seemed to dim under the shadow of the approaching threat. Civilian Lumari flooded the underground shelters, their bioluminescence flaring in bursts of panic as they hurried through narrow tunnels. Parents clutched woven quantium artifacts, pendants, bracelets, heirlooms that carried their history, now useless against the coming storm. Children whimpered, their patterns flickering erratically, while elders murmured prayers in low, harmonic tones, their voices trembling. The mobile labyrinths, a network of shifting tunnels beneath the surface, were their last defense, but every Lamari knew they were no match for the Vorgax's relentless advance. Dust swirled in the air, stirred by the colony's frantic preparations, as outdated drones powered up with a whine, their lights faint against the darkening sky. In the command chamber, the air grew heavier, the reactor's whine now a piercing screech that set teeth on edge. A technician, her patterns a frantic red, stammered, "The drones, they're only at 20% charge. They won't last an hour against the swarm." Her voice broke, and she turned away, her bioluminescence fading to gray, as if surrendering to despair. Lyrian's hands tightened on the hollow table, her patterns swirling in a storm of indigo and violet. She thought of Nebulin's history, how her ancestors had tamed this harsh world, their bioluminescence singing in harmony as they crafted quantium into works of art. Now, that legacy faced erasure. She imagined the shelters, packed with families, their patterns pulsing in unison, a collective heartbeat of terror. Her own heart pounded, her bioluminescence betraying the calm she projected. She had led Nebulin through famines and storms, but this was different. The Vorgax were not a natural disaster. They were a force of annihilation. Terran's tablet beeped, a new alert flashing. "Reactor output is destabilizing," she said, her voice tight. "If we keep diverting power to the shields, we'll lose life support in the shelters." Her patterns flickered, a mix of exhaustion and fear. She looked at Lyrian, her eyes pleading for a solution. "Elder, we're running out of time." Lyrian didn't answer immediately. Her gaze was locked on the hollow table, where the Vorgax fleet's silhouettes grew sharper, their jagged forms a promise of ruin. She saw her people's future in those ships, shelters breached, quantium veins stripped, bodies burned to ash. Her patterns shifted to a deep violet, almost black, a hue no Lamari had seen in generations. It was the color of a people staring into the abyss. She thought of the Galactic Council, its distant fleets and endless debates, too slow to save them. Her hands trembled, but she forced them still, her bioluminescence flickering with a faint gold. A spark of defiance drowned in despair. Kale's voice broke the silence, barely audible. "What do we do, Elder? We're not fighters. We don't have the weapons, the shields, the time." His patterns flickered erratically, a visual plea. He saw his sister's face, her son's tiny hand clutching a quantium pendant, their patterns dim with fear. "They're going to erase us." Lyrian turned to him, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. Her bioluminescence steadied, a faint gold threading through the violet. "We are Lamari," she said, her voice low but resonant. "Our light has burned through centuries. We will not fade easily." But even as she spoke, her patterns betrayed her doubt, pulsing unevenly. She knew the truth. Their shields were failing, their drones inadequate, their people defenseless. The Galactic Council was a distant dream, and Nebulin stood alone. The hollow table pinged again, faster now, a relentless drumbeat of doom. The Vorgax were 1 day away, and Nebulin's light was flickering on the edge of extinction. Lyrian's mind was a storm of doubt and resolve, the weight of Nebulin's survival pressing against her like a collapsing star. The Vorgax were 1 day away, their ships a promise of annihilation. The Galactic Council's aid was a distant fantasy, and her people, miners, not warriors, had no means to fight. She stood at the hollow table, its pings a relentless countdown, and felt the eyes of her team boring into her, waiting for a miracle she wasn't sure she could deliver. Her thoughts raced. Every decision she'd made as Elder, every compromise, every sacrifice had led to this moment, where hope was a flickering ember. Could she risk everything on a forbidden act, defying the Council to call beings she barely understood? Terran broke the silence, her voice low, almost ashamed. "There's one option left. The forbidden frequency." The words hung heavy, a taboo rarely spoken. Lyrian's heart skipped, her mind flashing to the Council's warnings. The Deathworlders were chaos, their strength a threat to galactic order. Yet the Vorgacs were closer, their destruction certain. She imagined her people in the shelters, their prayers fading into silence, their quantium legacy burned to ash. The thought clawed at her, a visceral ache. Defying the Council could strip Nebulan of its standing, but surrender meant extinction. "We be outcasts," she said, testing the idea aloud, her voice steady but her thoughts churning. "But if we do nothing, we're dead." Kale's breath caught, his mind reeling at the mention of the Deathworlders. He'd seen a vidlog once, smuggled from a trader, a human tearing through Vorgac's raiders, moving faster than his eyes could follow. The memory fueled his fear, a knot in his chest. Were they saviors or monsters? His sister, LYSS, and her son flashed in his mind, their faces pale with terror in the shelters. He wanted to scream, to beg for another way, but his voice came out small. What if they're worse than the Vorgacs? The Council says they're uncontrollable. His hands hovered over the console, trembling with indecision. Sending the signal felt like leaping into a void, unknown, irreversible. Terran's gaze darted between them, her thoughts a tangle of guilt and pragmatism. Suggesting the frequency felt like betrayal, yet she saw no other path. She'd spent years maintaining Nebulan systems, coaxing life from failing reactors, but now her skills were useless against the swarm. "We're out of time," she said, her voice tight with frustration. "The shields won't hold. The labyrinths won't stop them. If we wait, we lose everything." Her mind flicked to the civilians below, their lives her responsibility. The forbidden frequency was a gamble, but inaction was a death sentence. Lyrian's resolve hardened, a spark cutting through her doubt. She saw her people's history, centuries of crafting quantium, singing in harmony, facing erasure. The Council's laws felt distant, a luxury for those not staring down annihilation. "We call them," she decided, her voice unyielding. "If the Deathworlders are a risk, they're one we'll take." Her thoughts lingered on the consequences. Exile, sanctions, but the image of her people's light fading pushed her forward. She nodded to Kale, her eyes locking onto his, commanding him past his fear. Kale's heart pounded, his mind screaming against the act. He saw LYSS's face, her son's tiny hand clutching a pendant, and felt a surge of desperation. If he did nothing, they'd die. If he sent the signal, they might still die, but there was a chance. His fingers moved, inputting the forbidden frequency's coordinates, each keystroke a surrender to hope. "This is Nebulan Colony," he said, his voice cracking, broadcasting on emergency frequency. "The Vorgac swarm is one day out. Our defenses are failing. We beg for aid." Switching to halting English, he added, "Please, help us." The words felt alien, a plea to the unknown. The team waited, breath held, as silence swallowed the chamber. Lyrian's mind raced with what-ifs. Would the Deathworlders answer, or would the signal vanish into the void? Kale stared at the blank screen, his thoughts a whirl of fear and faint hope, imagining his family's survival hinging on this moment. Terran clenched her tablet, her mind calculating the odds, hating how they all led to ruin without help. A crackle broke the silence, sharp and jarring. A human voice, deep and unervingly calm, spoke, "I need time to think." The transmission cut off, leaving Lyrian, Kale, and Terran staring at the blank screen, their hopes teetering on the edge of a stranger's pause. Admiral Marcus stood on the Thunder's bridge, Nebulan's plea, "Please, help us," searing his mind. He'd cut the call with, "I need time to think," but time was a luxury Nebulan didn't have. As Deathworlders, humans were the forbidden frequency, their channel banned by a galactic council that feared their strength and reflexes. Answering could deepen humanity's exile, but ignoring the cry felt like abandoning his own soul. Marcus's thoughts churned. He'd seen colonies burn, lives lost for lack of aid. Nebulan was a chance to prove humans were more than the Council's bogeyman, a chance he couldn't let slip. Senior staff, war room now. he ordered, his voice steady but burning with resolve. The war room hummed with tension, its holographic displays showing Nebulin's coordinates. Marcus faced his officers, Captain Elena Ruiz, tactical lead, her mind sharp as a blade. Commander Li Wei, engineering chief, weighing costs in cold logic. And Lieutenant Sarah Kane, intelligence officer, ever skeptical. They knew the stakes, humanity's outcast status, the Council's paranoia, and their eyes locked on Marcus, ready to follow or challenge. Ruiz spoke first, her tone crisp. We can hit the Vorgax hard. 15 ships, fusion weapons, wolfpack tactics. We'd win. Her thoughts flicked to Nebulin's Quantium, a potential diplomatic chip to soften Council backlash. But acting paints us as rebels. The Council's waiting for an excuse to tighten the leash. Lee shook his head. Sanctions could choke our colonies. Trade routes, supplies gone. We'd survive the fight, but not the fallout. His mind calculated. Their fleet was unmatched, but humanity relied on galactic trade. Still, he saw a chance to test their tech against Vorgax's weaknesses, a rare opportunity. Kane's voice was sharp. The signal's real, I've checked. But if we move, the Council will call us a threat, maybe send enforcers. Her thoughts wrestled with hope. Saving Nebulin could win allies, show humans as protectors. But she couldn't shake the fear of a Vorgax ambush exploiting their response. Marcus absorbed their words, his mind a battlefield of duty and defiance. The Council had caged humanity, branding them monsters for their Deathworld origins. He thought of his daughter, safe on a distant colony, and imagined her in Nebulin shelters, waiting for a savior. He joined the fleet to protect, not to hide. The risks, sanctions, ambushes were real, but so was the plea in that voice, raw with desperation. Humans didn't turn away, not when they could act. We're going, Marcus said, his voice a quiet thunder. Not for quantium or politics, but because they're dying and we can save them. The Council fears us? Let them. We'll show them who we are, humans who help, no matter the cost. His thoughts settled, a fire kindled by Nebulin's need. He'd face the Council's wrath, navigate their sanctions, but he wouldn't let innocence burn. Ruiz nodded, her mind already plotting Vorgax's weak points. We'll hit them fast, exploit their patchwork tech. We shifted to logistics, calculating jump speeds. Full power to engines, weapons hot. Kane, still wary, began analyzing Vorgax patterns. I'll watch for traps. Their agreement was swift, human instinct aligning. They understood each other, no need for prolonged debate. Marcus stood firm, his thoughts on Nebulin. Humanity had fought to prove they weren't a danger. This was their chance to show they were a shield. Move the fleet. Maximum speed. Lyrian's heart pounded in the command chamber. The holotable's pings drowned by the thunder of Vorgax's fusion lances tearing into Nebulin's surface. The shields had crumbled hours ago, their quantium reactors reduced to molten slag. She gripped the console, her thoughts a scream of anguish as reports flooded in. Surface settlements razed, quantium mines collapsed, her people slaughtered. The Vorgax swarms, 27 ships loomed in orbit, their biomechanical hulls vomiting barges that lit the violet skies with fire. On the ground, their cybernetic troops, hulking, relentless, surged through the ruins, their claws dripping with Lumari blood. They're everywhere, Kale whispered, his voice hollow. He stared at the hollow table, its display a patchwork of red. Vorgax ground units advancing, settlements falling. His mind clung to his sister, LYSS, and her son, huddled in the shelters below. The forbidden frequencies silence gnawed at him. Their plea to the Deathworlders unanswered, hope a cruel mirage. We called them, and nothing. His thoughts spiraled. Had they angered the humans? Were they alone? Terran's fingers flew across her tablet, rerouting the last dregs of power to the shelter gates. The labyrinths are holding, but the Vorgax are blasting through, she said, her voice tight with despair. Her mind raced through calculations, all futile. The gates would fall within the hour. She saw the civilians' faces, their bioluminescent prayers fading in the dark. We can't stop this. Lyrian's thoughts were a storm of guilt and grief. She'd led her people to this, defying the council, pinning hope on a forbidden signal that brought no aid. The Vorgacs were merciless, their ground troops tearing through Lumari like a plague. She imagined the surface, artisans' workshops shattered, quantium carvings ground to dust, bodies strewn across violet fields. Her decision to call the Deathworlders felt like a betrayal, her leadership a failure. "We fought as we could," she murmured, but the words tasted like ash. Outside, Nebulon was a slaughterhouse. Vorgac's troops, their cybernetic limbs gleaming under ash-choked skies, stormed through settlements, their fusion rifles burning Lumari where they stood. A mother clutched her child, her bioluminescence flaring in panic before a Vorgac's claw silenced them both. Miners fought with tools, their strikes futile against armored hides. The air reeked of scorched quantium and blood, the ground trembling with each orbital strike. The Vorgacs looted as they killed, ripping quantium circuits from homes, their mechanical eyes glinting with greed. In the shelters, thousands of Lumari cowered, their bioluminescence dimmed to ghostly flickers. Children clung to parents, their prayers a low hum drowned by the screech of Vorgac's drills boring into the gates. Elders whispered of the old songs, but their voices broke, hope extinguished. LYSS held her son, his tiny hand gripping a quantium pendant, his eyes wide with terror. "Will they come?" he asked, his voice small. LYSS's heart shattered. She had no answer. The forbidden frequency silence was a death knell, the Galactic Council a distant myth. Kale's console flashed a new alert. The main shelter gate was buckling. "They're almost through," he said, his voice cracking. His thoughts screamed for LYSS, for any miracle to save her. He slammed his fist on the console, rage and despair colliding. "We trusted them. The Deathworlders, they'd abandoned us." His mind replayed the human's voice, "I need time to think," and he cursed its coldness. Lyrian's gaze fixed on the hollow table, with a Vorgac's flagship, a monstrous hulk, unleashed a fresh barrage. Her thoughts were a litany of loss. Her people's light, their songs, their future, all fading. She defied the council for nothing, her gamble a death sentence. "We did what we could," she said, her voice barely audible, a plea to herself. Her mind clung to a fading image, Lumari standing together, their bioluminescence a beacon. Now it was only darkness. Terran's tablet beeped, a final warning. Gates at 5% integrity. Minutes, maybe less. Her thoughts were numb, her fight drained. She saw her life's work, Nebulon's systems, its quantium heart, crumbling. "It's over," she whispered, her voice breaking. The chamber shook, a Vorgac strike hitting close. The hollow table flickered, showing the flagship's lances charging for a killing blow. Lyrian closed her eyes, her thoughts on her people, their screams echoing in her soul. The shelters would fall, the Vorgacs would feast, and Nebulon would be a memory. The forbidden frequency silence was her final failure. Then a flash lit the hollow table, so bright it blinded the room. Lyrian's eyes snapped open, her heart lurching. The Vorgac's flagship, moments ago a juggernaut, was split clean in two, its halves drifting apart like a sliced fruit, edges glowing molten. The chamber froze, Kale's breath catching, Terran's tablet slipping from her hands. The hollow table's sensors screamed, tracking a new signal. 15 human ships, their sleek forms tearing through the Vorgac's fleet with impossible speed. A crackle broke the silence, the command console flaring to life. A human voice, deep and resolute, spoke 2 words, "We come." The shelters beneath Nebulon's surface were a tomb of despair, the air thick with dust and the screams of the Lumari. The mobile labyrinth's gates groaned under Vorgac's drills, their fusion torches carving through quantium-laced steel. Inside, thousands cowered, their bioluminescence faded to ghostly flickers. LYSS clutched her son, his quantium pendant trembling in his tiny hand, as prayers rose in broken harmonics, drowned by the screech of metal giving way. The Vorgak's ground troops, cybernetic monstrosities with glowing eyes, laughed, their voices a mechanical rasp. A gold mine, one hissed, clawing at a looted circuit, its greed mirrored in its pack. The gate buckled, then exploded inward. Vorgax surged through, their fusion rifles flaring, cutting down Lamari who dared stand. A mother shoved her 1-year-old daughter behind a crate, but the child crawled free, babbling under a Vorgax's boots. The creature grinned, its blade glinting as it raised it high. The mother lunged, her scream piercing as she shielded her child. The blade fell, her bioluminescence fading forever, her daughter's wail echoing in the dark. The child lived, but the cost was etched in blood. The Lamari, driven to desperation, grabbed mining tools, picks, drills, and charged. "For our light," an elder roared, his voice cracking. But the Vorgax were unstoppable, their claws tearing through flesh, their laughter mocking the futile resistance. Bodies piled at the gate, bioluminescent blood pooling on the stone. LYSS's son sobbed, her thoughts a wail. Then, a blur of motion. Sergeant Major Elias Iron Voss, human marine, erupted into the breach, his augmented reflexes a whirlwind. His vibroblade hummed, slicing the Vorgax executioner in half, its cybernetic guts sparking. "Marines on me!" he roared, his voice a beacon. His strike team, 10 humans, enhanced and fearless, followed, their fusion carbines blazing. Voss's eyes met LYSS's, a flicker of a smile breaking his grim mask. "Stay down," he said, soft but firm, before turning to the Vorgax, his blade a scythe. The Marines were death incarnate. Voss moved faster than the eye could track, his strength shattering Vorgax armor like glass. A cybernetic soldier lunged. Voss sidestepped, his fist caving its skull. His team fanned out, their precision surgical, each shot a kill. The Vorgax, moments ago predators, faltered, their greed replaced by panic. The Lamari watched, awestruck, as Voss fought, his resolve unyielding, a steel-hearted warrior carved from Earth's crucible. LYSS's son stared, his tears drying. Here was hope, clothed in fury. Voss's thoughts were afire. Every Vorgax felled was a life saved. Every second bought a future for these miners. He'd seen colonies burn, sworn never again. A Vorgax heavy charged, its fusion lance roaring. Voss rolled, his blade severing its weapon arm, then its head. "Clear the gate," he barked, his team sweeping the shelter's entrance, bodies piling at their feet. The Lamari, inspired, dragged their wounded back, their prayers shifting to cries of defiance. Voss's smile returned, faint but real, as he saw their spark rekindle. To the Vorgax, he was a reaper, to the Lamari, a savior. Above Nebulon, Admiral Marcus commanded the thunder, his fleet of 15 ships ablaze against the Vorgax swarms 27. The bridge was a storm of orders, screens flashing with tactical data. Marcus's thoughts were razor-sharp. The Vorgax were butchers, their patchwork ships no match for human precision. He'd sent Voss's team to the surface. Now, he'd bury the swarm in space. "Wolfpack formation," he ordered. "Hit their weak points, no mercy." Captain Elena Ruiz at Tactical grinned, targeting their reactor seams, sloppy welds. Her mind danced through Vorgax flaws, her fingers directing fusion beams to cripple their cruisers. The Thunder's main cannon roared, slicing a Vorgax frigate's core, its explosion lighting Nebulon skies. Her thoughts burned with vengeance. These pirates had bled too many worlds. Commander Li Wei monitored engines, his calculations relentless. Full power to weapons, evasive jumps plotted. His mind ticked through fuel margins, ensuring the fleet stayed agile. A Vorgax destroyer fired a lance. Li's jump command dodged it, the beam grazing their shields. "They're slow," he muttered, his thoughts on their stolen tech's limits. The human ships darted, their speed unmatched, each strike a surgical blow. Lieutenant Sarah Kane tracked enemy patterns, her skepticism now a weapon. Their clustering panic move. Her mind spotted a gap, relaying coordinates for a flanking strike. Two human corvettes pounced, their torpedoes gutting a Vorgax carrier. Kane's thoughts flickered to Nebulin's miners. This was for them, a debt paid in fire. The Vorgax flagship, a hulking beast, rallied its fleet, its lances charging. Marcus's eyes narrowed, his thoughts cold. This ended now. All ships, focus fire on the flagship. Overload their core. The fleet converged, beams and torpedoes hammering the beast. Its hull glowed, then split, a silent nova erupting in the void. The Vorgax ships scattered, their cohesion shattered. Easy prey for human wolf packs. Marcus's mind steadied. Nebulin would not fall. The bridge crew cheered, but Marcus's thoughts were on Voss's team, on the Lumari below. Signal Nebulin, he said. Tell them, we come. His voice carried a promise. Humanity's strength forged into hope. Lyrian stood in Nebulin's rebuilt central plaza, the scars of the Vorgax assault still etched in cracked stone and shattered quantium carvings. Her bioluminescence pulsed softly, no longer violet with despair, but a steady gold of resolve. Around her, Lumari worked to restore their home, their harmonic songs rising anew. The Galactic Council had left them to die, their fleets too distant, their promises empty. Yet humanity, Deathworlders, feared and shunned, had come, their blades and ships turning the Vorgax tide. Lyrian's thoughts lingered on that day. Sergeant Major Elias Voss's smile as he saved her people. Admiral Marcus's signal, we come. She'd been wary, expecting savagery from the Council's bogeymen, but found protectors instead. Her gaze fell on a Lumari child, clutching a quantium pendant, laughing as a human marine. Voss himself knelt to hand her a tool. Voss's steel-gray eyes softened, his augmented frame gentle despite its power. Lyrian's heart warmed. These Deathworlders had bled for Nebulin, their strength a shield, not a threat. Her thoughts shifted to Kale, now leading a rebuild team, his sister LYSS and her son safe, their hope rekindled by human courage. Terran, too, had changed, her calculations now focused on integrating human tech to fortify Nebulin. The Lumari's trust grew, not blindly, but earned through shared sacrifice. Months later, Lyrian stood before the Galactic Council's assembly, a vast chamber of alien delegates. Her voice was firm, her bioluminescence blazing gold. Nebulin called for aid, and you turned away. The Vorgax would have erased us, but humanity answered. Her thoughts burned with the memory of shelters breached, her people slaughtered. She saw the Council's unease, species shifting, murmurs rising. They feared humans, their Deathworld origins a specter of chaos. You call them Deathworlders, outcasts, she continued, but they saved us when you would not. They are not your enemy. They are our shield. Kale at her side spoke, his voice steady. We owe them our lives. Sergeant Voss, Admiral Marcus, they fought for strangers, defied your ban. Judge them by their deeds, not your fears. His thoughts flicked to LYSS's son, alive because of a human's blade. The Council's silence was heavy, their paranoia palpable. A delegate, a scaled courtier, scoffed. Humans are reckless, their strength a threat. Lyrian's gaze hardened. Their strength saved Nebulin. Your inaction nearly doomed us. Her thoughts were unyielding. The Council's neglect was a betrayal. Humanity's aid a truth they couldn't ignore. The assembly stirred, debates igniting. Not all were swayed. The courtier, the Gallian elites, clung to fear. But others, smaller species like the Robolin, nodded, their thoughts shifting. Nebulin's plea, backed by quantium trade offers, carried weight. Days later, a vote passed, narrow but historic. The Council eased restrictions on human contact, a first step toward recognizing them as protectors. Lyrian's heart lifted, her thoughts on Marcus and Voss, on a galaxy where fear might yield to trust. Back on Nebulin, Lyrian watched the violet skies, a human ship, Thunder, orbiting above, a silent guardian. Her people's light burned brighter, their songs a testament to survival. The Council's change was slow, but humanity's act had sparked it. Nebulin would not forget.